panel now. So we are joined, of course, by former Tory MP Anna Firth. We've also got Lord Bailey and ex-Labour Party advisor Matthew Lars. Well, look, there's a lot to take in there, isn't there? Anna, do you think there should be some kind of review here? I mean, a jury, the standout line for me, though, is that it took a jury of his peers 17 minutes, right? Because that is essentially a jury of really normal people. Yep. And I don't think, based on anything he said, that most people would think that he could be staring down the barrel of years in prison. You know, do you think we need to kind of review into the sentences of some of these people? I
think we probably do. I think this was a particularly stark case, and I'm amazed that he was charged with, with an offence that carries a 7-year prison sentence, potentially. Obviously, it's unlikely anyone would get that much, but that shows the severity of the charge he was facing. I listened to the whole of that 13 minutes this afternoon. You showed us a few clips. It's absolutely clear that he is very affected by what had gone on, and he's saying that we have got to get together as a community in the right way. We've got to engage with the politicians. I mean, this is freedom of speech. That is a fundamental right in this country, and it's being eroded, and that is very, very dangerous. And I think Keir Starmer has a lot to answer for, because he, in my opinion, listening to him, I remember him saying it in the summer, calling people far right. He absolutely stoked those riots.
So, Sean, on that idea of stirring up racial hatred, I mean, we didn't have time to play the full 13-minute video there, as I'm sure people can appreciate. I imagine many people watching this have possibly already watched it out of curiosity. He was saying some things about how, he's disagreeing with mass immigration. He was disagreeing with the idea of there being, asylum seekers, specifically in his case in the Welsh valleys. And, to me, that seemed relatively reasonable. I don't think it was stirring up racial hatred. Are you surprised that it got that far, or...?
I think the thing that stuck out for me is what the police are struggling with, this idea that they two-tier police. So what's happened is you've had this guy who's made these comments. Some people may have liked them, some people would have not have liked them. But the point is you've had people who've done equally extreme things, far more extreme things on the other side, who didn't even get a knock on their door, forget put in front of a judge and maybe potentially facing 7 years. And this is where the judiciary can help out the police by being proportional. It does look like if you're in line with the Prime Minister, because he said some very strong words about what he would like to see happen, you're fine, you can push. And if you're not, you're in trouble, as he sees, if he sees you as far right. And I think that's a worry for our country, because it's breaking communities apart. We have to let people have free speech, but more importantly, politicians need to step back from winding up the system to act against the public.
I will just draw a distinction, because I mentioned Peter Lynch, who sadly took his own life whilst behind bars. But Peter, as I understand it, was actually convicted for being part of disorder, physical disorder. In a way, of course, that Jamie was not. Jamie's was verbal. It was more of a freedom.
It was an opinion. He expressed
it was an opinion thing. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that I think either of them should have gone to prison, by the way, but there is a difference to that offence there. So I'll make that very clear. But Matthew, the question I've been posing now, pretty obviously, really, is whether or not Keir Starmer had a role to play in people like Jamie even ending up in court. Do you think he did with the rhetoric he was using at the time?
No, I don't think that he did. I don't think we have. Thank goodness, I don't think we have that kind of judiciary. I mean, let's remember that we have. I know you're not always plugged in reading the Guardian, but I was reading a piece earlier in the week from one of the Just Stop Oil people who is rightly behind bars because they were found guilty of those offences. I mean, it seems to me, as far as Jamie's concerned, that actually the system worked. That the jury found him innocent, and that was right. Of course, there were some cases.
He was locked up for 17 days, this man. Imagine the one.
Anna, let Matthew come back.
Yeah, and there were always questions about whether cases should get there. A lot of innocent people do end up locked up because that's how the system works before they're ultimately found innocent. What I don't think we can have is the narrative of this is a whole group of political prisoners. This takes us over to what happened in the States, where Trump just let out everybody who had been found guilty in court after court for their part in the disorder there.
I think it does pose the question. I think you're right, fair enough, absolutely. But I do also think it poses the question, Sean, that if more people had pleaded not guilty and it had gone to a jury of quote-unquote normal people, really, I think there's a significant chance that more of them would have got off.
Absolutely.
I think there's two things to say. If the Prime Minister stands up and says he expects, it pushes it pushes the view of it one way. He's very important to the mood music. But I go back to me, which is the more important point. If we are seeing that only a certain political view ends up in court and somebody can do something equally as stupid on the other end of that political view and doesn't even get a knock on the door, you pull communities apart. You create suspicion. And that, for me, is what this case highlights. We had a case, I think it was in London, where people had posted stuff, teachers had to go into hiding and all sorts. Nobody went and spoke to them about 17 days in jail while they figured out if they were guilty or not. And that did happen in this case. And that drives the idea that it's two-tier policing. People hate that term. The police are really struggling with it. But this is what people cite as evidence. And the powers that be, including Keir Starmer, need to do something about the perception they are putting out.
Yeah, and the other thing that Keir Starmer did wrong, in my opinion, was not to give people the accurate information. You know, the killer, and I'm not going to name him and give him that satisfaction, he is now a terrorist. He is now in prison for terrorist offences. And the police knew that, the Prime Minister knew that, and that information should have been given at the beginning. It should not have been withheld. And that in itself did not help. Nothing Keir Starmer did in the summer helped bring us together. Everything was, and the second thing that was was amazing for me as a former barrister, the amount of people who did not get bail, this chap. That's normally he would have got
17 days behind bars.
Yeah, he would have got a bail within a few days.
Final word to you on this, Matthew. Do you feel as though there's any truth to that? Because I mean, Keir Starmer presumably will. He does say, doesn't he, that he doesn't want to contempt the court. He doesn't want to contempt the trial.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think that what there was initially, if you remember, there was a name who wasn't the person who was subsequently found guilty was being circulated in that was actually, in a sense, the thing that started the social media issue and then caused disquiet. And I think that Keir was trying to make sure that they, was trying to that person who was completely nothing to do with it wasn't involved. Let's remember that people who went to prison, a lot of them were for serious offences. This wasn't just for hurty words. This was for standing outside that Holiday Inn in Rotherham which was about to burn down.
Yes, but some of them were a 53-year-old grandmother.
But
you can still do things wrong if you're 53, Anna.
No, the issue here, hold on.
Posting on Facebook.
The last thing to look at is who reported him, because it has a political element, because you had Labour councillors running around encouraging people to report. That's something that the Labour Party need to look at, because, again, I go to my point about pulling communities apart. It looks like people are trying to silence different political views. That's not helpful.
Well, look,